What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the podcast. We are brought to you guys today by our advertisers. Our advertisers are Bell to Bell Fitness, Shea Tor, a realtor out in Arizona, former Bruin alum, and my main man Howard Chang, a realtor right here in Los Angeles. Let's go through them, guys. Bell to Bell Fitness is a boxing gym on the West Coast used by their FIT acronym, Fight Inspired Training. My main man, Tony Gonzalez, was the boxing coach for UCLA for over 10 years. He has built this gym on the West Side to learn how to boxing, stay in shape, and get you all the essentials you need to become somebody that is obsessed with boxing and fitness. Make sure to check it out. Go into Bell to Bell Fitness and say you heard about it from the Bruin Bible, and you're going to get a free session with Tony Gonzalez. So make sure to check that out. Shea Tor, my main man. Shea Tor is a licensed real estate agent in Arizona and a lifelong Bruin. He's a current Wooden Athletic Fund donor and football season ticket holder. When not selling houses or going to UCLA games, he loves to travel the country, checking out different arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. If you're looking to make the move to Arizona or know someone who is, please reach out to our loyal friend, Mr. Shea Tor. His phone number is 602-487-3975. Once again, his number is 602-487-3975. Make sure to check that out. And then the local realtor we got out here, Howard Chang. Howard Chang is a local realtor with the Serene team at eXp Realty. Their team has an office right here in Culver City, though they help clients buy and sell homes all over the LA County and the surrounding areas. Howard and his team do a ton of business and are super in tune with the market, knowing winning strategies to give their clients a competitive advantage. Have amazing vendor referrals, are a one-stop shop for anything real estate, and just provide a ton of value for their clients. Howard and his partner, Kyle Draper, are UCLA alums and a huge fans of the UCLA football and basketball programs. You will often see them at games, tailgating and networking, and staying involved with the UCLA alumni community. They would love to help any fellow alumni with accomplishing their real estate goals. So if you guys have any real estate needs in the LA area, look no further. Howard is your guy. All right, guys, we're going to go into the episode. What is up? Football is back this week for your UCLA Bruins. We took a nice long weekend off. Madman had his birthday last weekend, which was fantastic. I had my pops come into town. We kind of just moseyed around Los Angeles. It was a great weekend of rest for both of us, but we're ready to get back on the attack for UCLA football. And guys, I love it, man. UCLA basketball played its first exhibition game last night. Basketball season for our UCLA Bruins is officially here. Before we dive into that, Madman, how are we doing on this Thursday evening as we lead into another weekend of UCLA football?
Oh, brother, it's a great evening and so much joy to be able to do this with you. And what a fun time in the year. You know, November is a very special period where we get the crossover, right? I mean, we get the final third of the football season where, you know, the rubber really meets the road, and then right at the infancy of basketball season. So it's a thriving sports ecosystem for UCLA. So this next 30 days in particular, Will, I think is going to be so much fun for us.
Going to be a lot of fun, and they are traveling to one of the most hostile places in all of college football, taking on Matt Rule in the Nebraska Cornhuskers. 5-3 record. They're 2-3 in conference. They got absolutely smoked 2 weeks ago by Indiana. It was like a 56-7 contest out there in Bloomington. They actually showed a lot of fight this past weekend, though, as they made it very, very close and uncomfortable for Ohio State fans, nearly eking out a win there on the road. And you know, we talk about Lincoln, Nebraska being a tough place to play, and talk about the Horseshoe. I mean, that is an iconic college football venue. Came very close with that. And, you know, despite these two losses, consecutive losses, like I said, they're 5-3, Madman. The offense, you know, Dylan Raiola, you can see the potential with this kid. He's got 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the season. But what I'm worried most about is this defense is legitimately pretty good. You take out that Indiana game with Kurt Cignetti, who, I mean, come on, we've talked at lengths about how special this guy is as a head coach and what he's doing there. You take out that game, this defense has really played well. I think they only allowed, 21 points to an Ohio State offense that we had coming in the year as the best offense in the country. So just a lot of optimism there, from this defense from Nebraska fans. What are kind of some of the initial matchups you're looking at as we get closer and closer to Saturday's kickoff?
Yeah, Will, you said it best. And this is such an interesting game. UCLA coming off of the Ethan Garber signature performance against Rutgers, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week, and then also a refreshing bye to sort of reset and say, look, we've got 5 games here. Very interesting stretch here. 5 football games in the month of November for UCLA. So it's sort of a sprint to the end here, but they're refreshed, I think, with some momentum off the Rutgers game. And then you said it best on the other side with Nebraska. Is it possible to have momentum after a loss? I think it is in this particular case. When you talk about the absolute scare of scares for Ohio State, Will, I mean, they were up 3 midway through the fourth quarter of that game and looked really phenomenal, showed a ton of resilience and fight against a team that still many believe, I think including you and me, that is a national title favorite, in that group of 4, 5, 6 teams that can legitimately win the national title. And so a couple of matchups I think that really jump off the page, Will. First, you said it best. I think it's this, how will this UCLA offensive line hold up against this Nebraska front, right? And I think that's really where the conversation has to begin. Nebraska, 11th in the country in total defense, giving up 302 yards per game. 5th in the country in rushing yards per game, Will, at only 92 a contest. And when you look at their performance against Ohio State last week, they limited a Chip Kelly-led Ohio State offense to 285 total yards, Will. That's the lowest output Ohio State has had in a home game since 2015. And Ohio State only had 64 yards rushing in that game. So they totally controlled the line of scrimmage there. And so when you overlay that on top of a UCLA offensive line that's absolutely been a work in progress, along with a running game that's really at the bottom of Division I college football, how does UCLA's offensive line hold up here? And even if they can play close to a draw, can they sort of close to, not even necessarily win the matchup, but if you can just sort of stay relevant, because this is going to be a game, Will, where it's all about getting the ball out quickly for Garbers. And will he even have the time to get the ball out quickly? Because on top of the rushing prowess for Nebraska, 23 sacks on the year. So they got a great pass rush, great run defense. So this is all going to be about, can Garbers get the ball out to his playmakers? Because I think there's some advantages on the back end for UCLA with the Sturdys and the Loyas and the Floreses and the TMAs and the Gilmers. But you got to be able to get that ball out. And so that's going to be matchup number 1. How does this offensive line hold up? Number 2, Will, I think what I'm looking for is on the flip side, the UCLA pass rush against Raiola. Because I think where there's sort of a favorable matchup for UCLA defensively is, obviously we've got our quartet with Schlesinger, Toia, Kane Medrano, Femi Oladipo. I think UCLA is going to have a lot of success in the run defense department because I think Nebraska's leading rusher, Dante Dowdell, only 410 yards rushing, Will, over 8 games. So you're talking about your leading rushers only giving you 51 yards per game on a very modest 4.3 yards per carry. So Nebraska hasn't really been able to run very effectively. And if you look at how UCLA, particularly after moving Femi to the edge, how they did against Penn State, how they did against Minnesota, and really making life very difficult on Monangai for most parts of that game, I think it's a very favorable matchup in terms of UCLA's front against that Nebraska rushing attack. So I think you're going to start getting into some second and long, third and long situations. So now, how does this UCLA pass rush hold up against Raiola? That's going to be the big question. Raiola came out of the season like gangbusters. We're thinking about the next Pat Mahomes in terms of his mannerisms, everything that he's doing. They had that big win against Colorado. And then he's kind of come down to earth a little bit the last few weeks. So which Raiola is going to show up in the face of that pass rush? What kind of poise is he going to have? What kind of precision is he going to have? Is he going to be the Raiola that we saw against Colorado, the Raiola that threw for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against a team like Illinois? Or is it going to be the Raiola that we saw who looked really overwhelmed and overmatched against Indiana, 4 turnovers, and that game got blitzed? So which Raiola sort of shows up relative to that UCLA pass rush that struggled so mightily to be able to get pressure on the quarterback? That's going to be a critical matchup again. And then third, Will, I think it's Garbers against the 12th man. You said it best. I mean, Lincoln, Nebraska is one of the hardest places to play and probably one of the most loyal fan bases, if not the most loyal fan base in all of college football. I mean, we sort of joked in the past, Will, they've sold out every game since like World War II. And so for Garbers to step in there now, 2 very difficult road games this team has played. The 2 valleys, right? Death Valley, Happy Valley. Garbers didn't play the Happy Valley game due to injury. The Death Valley game We had a lot of success in that first half. Felt like LSU kind of got their act together defensively, and then the moments got a little bit big for that offense in the second half. I don't think UCLA is going to have the luxury of a Nebraska defense that's looking to sort of find themselves in the first half. I think they know exactly what they want to do. It's going to be high pressure. How does Ethan Garbers hold up in the face of expected pressure? How well does he protect the football? How well does he make the right decisions, avoid a lot of negative plays, and keep this team in the game? So those are the three matchups, Will, that I'm really looking for Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and with Ethan Garbers, man, being back there, I want to compare it to what Colorado had when they went out to Nebraska, a team that's really improved since that game. I think they're 6-2 at this point in time throughout the season. Shedeur Sanders got roughed up in a way we just haven't seen from him in college football. And I know that offensive line is far from perfect. That Nebraska D-line is 17th in the entire country in sacks. They're going to get after this team right now, especially with the offensive line woes that are, out there for UCLA. We looked a little bit better against Rutgers, but the top two pass rushers were out of the ball game. So offensive line play is going to be very, very critical for success. I agree with you. I think, UCLA's run defense will be solid. This is a team in Nebraska that comes in 103rd in the nation out of 134 teams in rushing offense. So I'm expecting Schlesinger to do Schlesinger things, man. He's been the player all year long. He's been the MVP for this UCLA team. Toia to open those gaps up for Schlesinger and, Kane Medrano. We need a pass rush, though, man, because, I think it's going to come down to a lot of these third down plays where it's going to be 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7. And Raiola, while he is, mistake worthy, he has some, prone to making some big time errors, if you will, for Nebraska. He's also incredibly talented. And I can easily see him dicing up a secondary that made Ethan Kaliak-Manis look like one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, 2 weeks ago. So that is very, very troubling on the side of that. I think there's just a lot of issues with UCLA. And, we talk about it, the 125th in total offense, even after a win. I looked up our rushing totals, Madman, and it is completely embarrassing. We are now dead last in the country in rushing yards per game at 64.6 yards a contest. The next closest team at 132nd, Middle Tennessee, is 76.6 yards. So we have a 12-yard difference between us and the next closest team when it comes to registering rushing yards within a college football game. It's tough to see that. I'm 2-5. I think we're pretty optimistic after that Rutgers game. I'm not saying we're going to get the run game going. I'm going to favor, Nebraska in this on the road. It pains me to do that, but knowing the offensive line woes, knowing how good this Nebraska front is, they're only going to need Raiola to make a couple plays with a secondary I don't feel that confident in. I'm going to take Nebraska on this on the road. I mean, am I crazy for thinking this? Or maybe there's another way around where UCLA can maybe search.
No, Will, I think you said it really well. I mean, you have to be able to run the ball on the road to be able to kind of control tempo. And when you can't do that, it becomes very, very difficult. I think UCLA's hope in this game is, can they pop off a couple big runs? Because you're not going to be able to sort of consistently run the ball to where, on this defense and get kind of 4, 5, 6 yards consistently. Does Keegan pop one, or does Berger, sort of make a break after, absorbing some contact? That's kind of your only hope there. But I agree with you, because the value of the run game, you're controlling tempo, you're controlling the chains, you're controlling time of possession, you're sort of setting the game up, in terms of number of possessions late, and really sort of playing the chess game. Without that, you're sort of at the mercy of an opposing pass rush. So I agree with you. I think UCLA is going to be very feisty. I think Nebraska is going to win some on 3rd and long. I think they're going to lose some on 3rd and long, but I think they're probably going to find a little bit more consistency offensively, particularly at home. And Raiola also just looks like a different guy at home, which is very natural for a true freshman. He's more confident, and I think they're more confident in their defense. I think it's going to be a field position type of game, Will, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be a valiant effort, but I see Nebraska winning this game 23-16.
Yeah, I think that's a fair estimate. And with Raiola, 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The Mahomes thing, I think a lot of people got on him for that. I think a lot of people are getting on him for being turnover worthy a little bit at this young of an age. What I would say is, when you look at the grand history of true freshmen, and I'm not even talking about the Jameis Winstons and the Johnny Mantels, those guys redshirted. You know what I mean? They had a year to learn the offense, to make plays. Raiola, for starting this early at that much of a blue blood school, that's very impressive to me.
No question.
And I think
no question.
He's only going to get better moving forward. So, it's kind of cool that we're going to get a taste of Raiola, who, as experts are projecting right now, maybe the top pick in the draft 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So we're going to get an early crack at what Raiola could be. And this is a big game for UCLA. So hopefully we can step up to the plate. And like we said, if you win this game, if you can go into Lincoln, get this done, this is the momentum you can build on for the rest of the season. USC looks like it may have quit. They might not be the same team we expected them to be to start up with. You got some winnable games, Fresno State being one of those games. There's a lot to left. We're going to be at the Iowa game next Friday, which is a team that still really doesn't have an offense. So that's going to be fun to watch. Man, I think there's a lot to be played for if you can take this game on the road in a very, very tough environment at Lincoln. So those are our predictions when it comes to the football team. Basketball is here, man. And the first exhibition last night, this is like a kid waking up on Christmas morning knowing that UCLA college basketball is back. They take the victory 100-64 over Cal State LA. And there was just a few notable points, with some of these transfers. We were kind of wondering who would be the starting five, that Mick Cronin was going to throw out. Who would be kind of the go-to hot hand? We'll start with the go-to hot hand. We mentioned him in the podcast where we previewed the team. Bilodeau, my goodness, 24 points in 20 minutes, 9 of 11 from the field. You know what vibes he actually gave me out there, man? He's got a little bit more of a post game, like old school post game than this guy does. He gives me a lot of Lowry Markkanen vibes. Just to kind of compare what he's able to do in the court, the spacing he creates for the rest of the team when he kind of drops to the corner for a three or, out to the wing. This guy is a natural born scorer. And, we had flashes of Sebastian Mack last year. We had flashes of Dylan Andrews. It's been a while since UCLA's had a scorer like this, probably since Jaquez. So to get Bilodeau in there and to do it at the post position at 6'9" was such a awesome find in the transfer portal coming from Oregon State. Before we get into everybody else, talk to me about what you saw from Tyler Bilodeau out there on the floor in Westwood.
No, Will. I mean, this is why we're so excited, right? I mean, this is going to be the face of the offense this year. There's no question about it because he's the most versatile. He can do it at all levels of the defense. I love the Markkanen comparison. He also, I'll be honest with you, his game, he's got more range than the guy that I'm describing. But when you just talk about skill and footwork and ability to be in the post, but also ability to step out, he reminds me of a young Gasol, a young Pau Gasol, with a little bit more range. There's even, it's almost like level 1 and level 2 of Gasol with sort of the level 3 of Porzingis. You sort of put all that together. Obviously very high praise, long way to go, but he did just the skill is sort of remarkable. 9 for 11. That's when you really have a mastery, Will, of a game at sort of a scrimmage level when you're at 80, 90%. It was just a variety, right? I mean, he could just sort of do it all. He never looked stressed. And that's when you're a really significant offensive player because it's always about the counter. It's like, okay, you take away the drive, I'm going to shoot. You take away the shot, I'm going to put it on the deck. You take away the left, I can go right. If you take away the right, I can, reverse pivot back. He's out there and he's basically saying, okay, tell me what you're going to take away and I'll just go do something else. It's just such a complete player. And I think honestly, Will, you said it. Jaquez was the go-to guy of this team for a couple of years. We haven't really had a player quite like that. I'll be very honest with you. I mean, even Jaquez, there were moments where, it was tough to score, right, with Cronin. I mean, in terms of just pure level of skill, Will, we might have to go all the way back to sort of Kevin Love in college. Yeah. I mean, that's really where this is in terms of level of scorer and ability at this particular stage. So Bilodeau is every bit the billing. Fits right into Will with all these other guards that we're going to get to, but he's kind of the centerpiece there. And you sort of got that enforcer. We'll get to it with Daly. And then you got all these guards. I just love sort of the composition of this team and everything starts with Bilodeau. Probably one of the most unique offensive players in all of college basketball this year. And he's going to take the Big Ten by storm.
Oh my gosh. You nailed it with the term effortless. Like all three levels of scoring, whether it was the perimeter, whether it was the mid-range, whether it was around the basket, he had a bag for that, a variety of different moves to get to the basket, make some nice jumpers, go from downtown. It looks so easy out there. And granted, it's Cal State LA. This is what an exhibition game is all about. But you want your team locked in and looking great, and that's exactly what UCLA did. So Bilodeau leading the way on the offensive end. And, the guy that we talked about, the big name transfer, the guy that Mick Cronin has been raving about, all throughout, fall practice leading up to where we are now, is Kobe Johnson is asserting himself as the leader of the team. And we talked about it, in our initial preview. We think this guy has probably the best chance of being a first-round pick for UCLA off this team. And it's all about the little variety of skills. I listened to this podcast where, they had Carmelo Anthony, they brought in Rich Paul, and Rich Paul was talking about how his clients come to him and what he wants them to develop going to the NBA. It's, hey, everyone can get a bucket in the NBA. What other skill sets do you bring to the table? And when I look at a guy like Kobe Johnson, already an elite defender, you add what he did last night on the facilitating side of things, 11 assists for this offense. You add that to what he can potentially bring. He's, becoming a more lights out shooter from the perimeter as well. If Kobe Johnson puts this passing on tape for a whole year, there's no way he makes it out of the lottery. Like, this guy is insane. Talk to me about Kobe Johnson, because for Bilodeau scoring, it was one thing, but the offense ran through the talented forward from USC last night.
Well, it was mind blowing, because Kobe Johnson, we knew the body, we knew the perimeter defense. That was sort of a given. We had talked, a couple of weeks ago prior to all these scrimmages beginning that, his ball handling is a lot better than people realize. I think he was very underutilized at USC for a lot of kind of structural, systemic reasons. So we were expecting him to do more offensively. Reminded me a little bit of a Flalo at that particular phase. But Will, the 11 assists came out of nowhere. And just to sort of put it, I think, in some context, what does 11 assists mean in a college game? Because again, college is longer possessions. It's a more structured game, Will. It's not the free-flowing, come down, just jack up threes in the NBA. It's not this sort of free-flowing game.
Golden State Warriors.
It's not, it's like, it's not the choreographed dance, of the NBA. And so the equivalent here, Will, is to get 10-plus assists in any sort of a college game, to me, is the equivalent of getting a 50-point game in the NBA. That's about how, difficult it is. So the fact that he was able to get 11 assists, granted it was Cal State LA, granted it was a exhibition, but there was his ability to get the ball to the right spots. We just did not see this in his bag last year. And I think it brings such a phenomenal element now, Will, of like, who is going to be the primary point guard? Is it going to be Kobe Johnson? Dylan Andrews now, I mean, is he the backup? What happens with Perry? What happens, Sky Clark is more of a 2. So it's very fascinating to see how this goes. But Will, I will tell you, this would be an absolute game changer for UCLA. If you have a point guard who's 6'5", 6'6" in college, who can sort of lock up your best defender. Look, March is all about guard play, and then and finding, Bilodeau and those guys, the Zach Eady's from last year, what have you. But it's all about the guard play. Why didn't Purdue win the national championship last year when Zach Eady was clearly the best player in the country? His guards didn't come along with him. The guards came and went. If you have a 6'5" point guard, Will, who can play the facilitator role in this way, I mean, now we're starting to talk. Like, I don't want to get too excited here. I mean, we just compared Bilodeau to Kevin Love, but like, Kobe Johnson is like, he was looking like Lonzo Ball out there. I mean, from a couple of years ago. I mean, it was really remarkable to see, Will. And so you start putting those two guys together. If they can maintain that pace, I mean, this is not only is Kobe Johnson, Will, to your point, a lottery pick, top 10 even, UCLA's, the season might begin in the Final Four if these guys kind of hit their ceiling.
Yeah. So, I mean, you add to the fact that this guy is one of the preseason favorites for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Boy, if he can lead the conference in assists with that is a wet coach's dream,
That's
for
insane.
what's going on there, for what he's able to bring to the table. So, Kobe Johnson, we're keeping an eye on you. I want to talk about Sky Clark. I want to talk about some other guys, but kind of the name that went under the radar because so many transfers came at so many different times. When I watched it last night, and I've watched the highlights when he was at Oklahoma State, I am completely sold on Eric Daly Jr.
Yep.
You pair him with Kobe Johnson on the wings as a defender, 6'9". He had that beautiful dunk in transition to kind of start the game for UCLA last night. This kid is a baller. And Eric Daly, I get some Jared Vanderbilt vibes where he's just very long and lengthy. Might even be a better shooter if he puts the time in there. But I just think this kid is going to be an absolute star for this team. I think he's going to be a role-playing all-star for UCLA this year. That length, that size, that motor with Mick Cronin playing him on the defensive side, gosh, I would rather be anybody else in college basketball than who has to be guarded by Kobe Johnson and Eric Daly. What did you see from Daly? Because I'm thrilled. I'm through the moon with what this kid can bring for UCLA.
No, Will, he's just so long. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the amount of ground he covers in, one or two steps or one or two movements is absolutely remarkable. And, so athletic. And then also you're talking about a guy who embraces the physicality. So, you've got the athleticism, you've got the physicality, you've got the wingspan. He's going to be kind of that enforcer, in this. It's fascinating because they are sort of revolutionizing Mick Cronin's basketball philosophy right now. I mean, you're looking at all these guys. Everybody's between 6'4" and 6'10". I mean, sound familiar, Will, as a Warriors fan? I mean, it's very interesting. It's sort of the NBA equivalent here would be kind of the switch everything, the death lineup, quote unquote. But that's sort of where this is kind of headed is the vast versatility, everybody between 6'4" and 6'10", who can play 2 or 3 positions on the court. And I really believe, Will, we talked about this. To me, Daly and Bilodeau with Kobe Johnson and 2 guards. Now, which of those 2 guards sort of emerges, we'll be discussing more about that. To me, that's your best 5. And then you sort of throw in a Amara and some of the guys, where does Mac fit into all of this? But I think that's sort of your best 5 because Daly, Kobe Johnson, and Bilodeau are the 3 most unique players. I think that if there's a significant drop-off if you lose any one of those 3 guys. I think everybody else on the team, very, very talented. But at this stage, there's more interchangeability there. There's a lot of overlap there. But I just love what Daly brings to the table, Will. And I think we've also not quite seen everything just yet either with Daly. I think there's more to be had. The physicality, he's going to be able to rebound. He's going to be able to run and spread the wing. And just the phenomenal defense. I mean, you got strong side Kobe Johnson, weak side Daly, or vice versa. And,
Wow.
You play zone. I mean, and you can do all kinds of things. You can sort of go man-to-man with them. You could play zone with the other 3. There's all kinds of interesting things that Mick can do with this lineup that's absolutely sensational. So, I mean, Will, it really feels like the NIL came home. We knew it would. We had the insider knowledge there. But my goodness, I mean, the shift from last year to this year, it's going to be staggering when people see it.
It's going to be seismic. And I mean, 11.7 rebounds in 23 minutes of work. He had it in 4 assists. You can make the argument he was the most versatile player we had last night from a two-way standpoint. So you had Daly next to Kobe Johnson, Bilodeau. I mean, looking like Will Chamberlain out there, 24 points in 20 minutes. Like, what are we doing here? That was fantastic. I think a lot of people thought Daly wouldn't be a starter due to William Kyle coming in, what his defensive prowess was, Summit Defensive Player of the Year. What does that say for the depth of this team when you got a conference Defensive Player of the Year in the 5 spot? You can just rotate in off the bench. Yeah. Everybody was eating last night, man. Ade Mara got in 8 points in 7 minutes. Sebastian Mack, 10 points off the bench. My guy, Stefanovic, 2 of 4 from 3. Pretty on brand there. This team is just as deep as you'll ever see, man. I think this team has all of the tools in the tool chest to reach that ceiling of a Final Four, man. I mean, anybody else you want to talk on? Maybe.
Yeah, no, Will. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, it's a deep question. Like, what do you do? Do you bring in Daly, to your point? Do you go bigger? Do you go Daly? I know I'm in the minority here. I would actually sort of go, just given what Daly kind of brings from a physicality standpoint. It depends on the team that you're playing, but I just think UCLA is so well positioned. If they need to go bigger, they can. If they need to go kind of smaller and more versatile, they can. I also love, Will, what I saw at Amara. I mean, he looked bigger. He put on, there was 12, 15 pounds that was added there, a good 10 pounds of muscle. Last year he was getting just pushed around everywhere. He looked a lot more sure of himself in the post. I think he's going to be a great rotational piece for this team. I mean, and then, what is going to happen with the incumbents? That's going to be the big question. I thought Mac had his spots. Mick got into Mac a little bit there, middle of the game for some defensive and some switching purposes. You've got Dylan Andrews, but, Sky Clark, played so phenomenally well. He had a big night, 17, I believe. And then you're looking at a situation here, Will, where, we haven't even talked about Trent Perry. How is he going to sort of fit in? So we're sort of in a world here where it doesn't have the same top end talent as this team, but it feels a little platoonish, like a la 2015 Kentucky, and so I think the biggest challenge here, the first 5, 6, 7 games of the season, and UCLA's in a good spot here, a lot of tune-up games early. It's a little bit of a light schedule to begin. You're just trying to figure out the rotation. You're just trying to figure out who's getting the minutes, how it's going to be. So I think these first handful of games is going to be really exciting to see the mixing and the matching that's going to take place. And there's just so much variety. I mean, it's a war chest.
Staggering.
I mean, it's a coach's dream. It's a coach's dream, Will.
It's staggering, man. And you could just the different lineups you could bring in. Like, we play a bigger team. Ademara looks like he's going to be that like Boban Taco Fall type of player where you beat him in the post. He's so big and he's got enough skill level where he can get by. I think Mara is going to be one of the better players in this program if he sticks around UCLA for a long time. The problem is it's so loaded right now. I don't think he's going to start for another year, maybe 2, with what's going on here. So you got Ademara there. William Kyle, we mentioned, man. I mean, just a beast, had a rejection last night, looked really, really good. Dom Harris. We talked about Trent Perry. I mean, he may not be it's going to take a while for him to kind of get up to speed.
I mean, we're talking about, a 5-star McDonald's All-American could be the 11th man on this team. Like, I mean, think about that. I mean, that's where we're at right now. I mean, Dom Harris is obviously sharpshooter. He and Stefanovic are going to be battling for minutes. I think to me, the other sort of fascinating element is going to be this sort of Sky Clark, Andrews, Max situation. Like, how does that sort of play out? So I think it's sort of what's going to be interesting these first 5, 6 games. Well, it's sort of the battles within the battles, right? I think it's pretty clear Bilodeau is kind of a unicorn. Kobe Johnson's kind of a unicorn. Daly's kind of a unicorn. But then you've got these other battles. And so, like, how is everyone going to sort of fit in, accordingly? And where do they sort of slot in? So I think it's going to be really exciting to watch. And it's a breath of fresh air, Will. I mean, last year we saw the non-conference. I mean, there were some ekers. We had UC Riverside. We had to win by 1. I mean, there was some nail biters there. So the fact that we're sort of on the other side of that, UCLA basketball definitely feels back in a huge way.
Feels very much back. You guys, thank you for tuning in live. We're going to be post game on the Nebraska front, so stay tuned for that. That'll probably be a Saturday night affair. Talking about what's going on with UCLA and Nebraska. You guys have a good one. Comment what you guys want to see from us. We're going to be doing a lot more basketball. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, to the podcast. Nothing but love. Fours Up Bruins fans. We'll talk to you on Saturday evening.